Hello, baseball fans. It is Saturday, February 22nd, 2025. My name's Cole Wagoner. This is the Rounding Second podcast where I like to dive into numbers, see how they help us, see how they hurt us, and where they can take us. It is a beautiful Saturday because we have spring training baseball going on. It's officially started since the last time I uploaded on here. So I could not be happier to talk about new things, old things, whatever. I just love baseball. Happy to be here. For those of you that are new, I have a system where I go through four main stories of the day: first base, second base, third base, and home, in increasing order of, importance, how much people find it interesting, how much I find it interesting. It doesn't really matter. It's just four things. The last one's going to be the longest segment. They just get longer as we go. But I'm not going to talk about that too much. For first base today, baseball is back. Like I said in the intro, I could not be happier. I did watch the Mariners game yesterday. Semi-unfortunately, they lost 5-2 to the Padres. Manny Machado had a 2-run bomb in the first inning. Tough start. But funny enough, Samad Taylor hit the first home run for the Mariners in back-to-back years. So that's an interesting development for him. And then for those people, look, we had, one hit yesterday? And for the people that are freaking out, oh no, the offensive struggles have continued, nothing's changed. It's one game, guys. It's one spring training game. It doesn't matter. I did a project in class for school where I showed that there's basically zero correlation between spring training stats and regular season stats. Actually none. Look at last year when the Mariners had the best offense in baseball in spring training, and then look at their offense. So I don't, if they're bad, you're mad. If they're good, it doesn't matter. So it's let's just relax a little bit, people. Really nothing matters. The first game of the year, back on Thursday, had a little scare in the third inning when Bobby Miller took a linebacker kind of back right off his forehead. Left an instant welt. It was a scary moment, but he's okay. As of today, we know that there's no fractures. He's going to be fine. Probably a pretty good bruise. It was 105.5 miles an hour. It was moving pretty good, but he will be okay. Luckily, it seemed like it was glancing, so that's pretty good. And in other news, the Yankees can now have facial hair, which is really funny because it comes on the heels of Devin Williams shaving the beard that he worked on for forever. But, it is what it is. I guess he can grow it back out now as long as it's well-groomed, whatever that means. That's for their interpretation, not mine. All right, and for second base today, moving off of actual games and into more transactional things, Rowdy Tellez was signed to the Seattle Mariners, who, I cover here, so we should probably talk about it. It's an interesting move. Rowdy Tellez, he played for the Blue Jays, he played for the Brewers, and now he's a Mariner. He's a first baseman on paper, but if you look into the stats at all, like I'm looking at right now, he's not a first baseman. He's not very good at it. He's like a DH. He can stand at first, I suppose, if he needs to, but that's really all he should be doing. But he's a solid depth piece. People think that it's going to preclude some other transaction by the Mariners, like they're going to trade Luke Raley, they're going to trade Locklear. Probably not. He's probably just another option, just in case. It's never bad to have too many people. He's a solid bat. He has a tendency to get hot. If you look at last year, he had a couple really good months, like July and August, played pretty well. Probably won't get a ton of time here in Seattle, hopefully. But if he does, it shouldn't be too terrible. He's a fine bat. He's about league average. It's not really going to hurt you as long as he's playing mostly DH. If you have him in the field every day, he's ultimately going to hurt you. I don't think there's a lot to get into with the Rowdy Tellez deal. I think it kind of is what it is. He's just lefty depth, and it doesn't mean someone's going to get traded. Probably would have already happened if it was going to. But I think Luke Raley and Tyler Locklear are fine. They're going to be fine. It's probably just in case, because we've rolled out some whack lineups the past few years, let me tell you. So yeah, there's really not much to go into there. We're going to move right along. All right, for third base today, I think interesting thing since the last time I've recorded is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did not get an extension by his self-imposed deadline for the Blue Jays. And I think that is interesting considering how, we've seen Pete Alonso's free agency go. But we know that Vlad Jr. is younger than Pete Alonso. He's probably better than Pete Alonso. And I think it's smart, It could be just a negotiating tactic to say, I'm going to try everybody so he doesn't have exclusive negotiating rights with just the Blue Jays. Because if you have everyone in the pool, it's going to drive your numbers up, especially if he bets on himself, has another great season like he did last year with a 950 OPS. He's going to be good. And he's probably going to make a ton of money for it. He'll probably not get Juan Soto money, but he's going to get 400, 500 million probably with how young he is. And we know that the Blue Jays are willing to offer a bunch of money. They tried to sign Shohei. They've tried other large acquisitions this past offseason that they've unfortunately fallen short on for them. So I don't think the money's going to really be that big of an issue. They just didn't reach a deadline. If Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wants to be a Blue Jay, he's going to be a Blue Jay, and that's basically all it boils down to. I think one thing the Blue Jays could do that would be interesting, because this is his last year of his contract, is if they are, a little behind where they want to be. Maybe they're out of a playoff spot. Maybe they're not really competing under 500 by the trade deadline. I could see a world where they trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as a rental for the second half of the year and get a little bit of prospect action out of him, and then just re-sign him in the offseason. I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that. I'm sure Blue Jays fans probably wouldn't like it very much, but I think it could be smart. I mean, I could see the Jays doing it if they aren't where they want to be, and then they just kind of run it back with Vlad again next year with a better minor league system, or maybe a better major league piece, depending on who they trade him for. Maybe a pitcher, maybe a reliever. I don't know, but it could be an interesting opportunity to get their team better this year if it's not the year they want, and then just kind of instantly reload and come back in 26. And now for home today, we're going to actually retread some old ground from last podcast and go more into what it could mean. So we're going to talk about Mike Trout going into right field. Now, I know I'm retreading old ground, but I think his situation is interesting and gives us an opportunity to talk about something that I think we should talk about. I think it helps us go a deep dive into kind of the way we view baseball, and if old, things could be misconceptions, just the way we view the game. It gives us an opportunity to talk about something a little beyond Mike Trout just moving to right field. And so when you go into looking at baseball statistics, right? If you're just a normal person, you don't really know anything about advanced data, you don't know what a WAR, WRC plus, OPS plus, all these different things, different metrics are, what you should do, first of all, when you go into a site, is have a question in mind. It could be literally anything. Could be simple, could be complex. It could be, my team traded for this player. How good is he? What's his batting average? Is he good in certain situations? It could be a lot of things. Or same is true for pitchers. Is he good, in high leverage relief in like the ninth inning for a close? Is he better in the sixth after a starter comes out early? Could be a lot of things. But you need to go in with a question. So my question when I go into Mike Trout moving to right field is, does it matter from an injury and health standpoint? And how does it impact the Angels defense specifically? So I'm actually going to answer these questions in reverse, and let's get right into it. So here on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to say everything. You're not going to miss much. It's just easier to look at it visually if you're on the channel on YouTube. But it really shouldn't matter much. So if you look on Mike Trout's Baseball Savant page, it shows you his numbers historically with things like fielding run value, outs above average. These are just different ways to record how good a defensive outfielder is. Mike Trout historically, if you look at this, has been pretty average in terms of fielding run value. He had one really good season or decent season in 2018, but ever since then, he hasn't been great, which is also, we know, kind of when the injury started in 2019, and then 2020 was obviously a weird year for everybody, and then 21 through last year, he hasn't played a lot, obviously, but when he hasn't put up, stellar defensive numbers by any source of the imagination. And outs above average will kind of tell you the same thing. In 2016-17, he wasn't actually very good. He had a great year in 2018. Numbers back that up everywhere. And then ever since then, he's slowed down a little bit, right? He had, they match up pretty well with his good seasons, his average seasons, but they're all pretty average. His run value being the highest at 7 is like fine, and being at 14 for his career is fine. Like, for example, Pete Crow Armstrong, the center fielder for the Cubs, had 16, fielding run value just last year, and that's more than Trout has accumulated over his entire career. To be in the top 10 for a single season, if you go back, it's about 8. So 7 is probably just right outside the top 10, probably like 10 to 15. So he's just a historically pretty average center fielder, which isn't bad. Center fielder is a hard position to play, and I think if you're average at it, you're still providing good benefit to your team. With outs above average, his being at 6 is, it's going to tell you basically the same story as the fielding run value. For a top 10 season, you want about 7 in one single season. So his being at 6 for his career, kind of tells you the same story. He's about average, right? And, signs of slowing down since 2021 because of injuries, Now, next to the normal outs above average metric that you see on Baseball Savant, it'll tell you specifically in the directions how he plays, which is really good to break down, left fielders, right fielders, because they move in different directions generally, because most batters are right-handed hitters that tend to pull the ball. So left field's going to get usually more action than right field. So right fielders are going to be moving toward the right more, left fielders probably toward the left more, and center fielders kind of have to do it all, right? And we see historically that lateral towards third base, so if you're playing right field, moving to your right, historically, Mike Trout has 10 outs above average, which is pretty solid. Because when you look at lateral towards first base or moving to his left, he's not quite so good. So maybe putting him in right field as opposed to left field is the correct decision, right? Because he moves better right. He's going to be flowing right. He's going to be doing more things to the right as a right fielder. So I think this is the technical correct move, and I think it is smart to put him in right and not left. Taylor Ward, we see, is pretty solid in left. But if we move into Jo Adell and his defense, now that he's playing center field, we can kind of see how he does. And Jo Adell has the inverse of Mike Trout. He is not as good moving toward third base. His lateral outs above average moving to his right is -8, then to his left is 0, which is a lot better. So it's actually about the same split because Mike Trout's 10-1, so he's a little above average at both. And then, we see Jo Adell's not good in moving to the right. And so asking him to play center field with a majority right-handed batters and a lot of balls that are going to be in the left center field gap, that might worry you a little bit. He's better moving back on the ball than in on the ball, so any ball hit short of him and to the right could become an issue for the Angels defensively in the outfield. And if we look at his other mate in left field, Taylor Ward, and the same stats, we look at his moving to the left. As a left fielder, you're probably going to be moving left towards center as opposed to right towards that foul line. He is worse moving left than he is moving right at -6 and -1, respectively. So he's below average in both, but well below average at moving toward first base, which is really not great given that, total amalgamation that we have going on there, because if Jo Adell's moving right and he can't do that very well, and Taylor Ward's moving left and he can't do that very well, I don't know what the heck is going to happen in that left center field gap, which, isn't going to probably be a huge issue, right? A lot of balls, they hang up in the air. They're just normal fly balls. There's only going to be, a few, really, balls that will meet the criteria that will make this an issue. But we can see that when things are an issue, they will find a way to rear themselves. And it just worries me a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, but it could become a problem in the largest stage or at the big moment. You never know. But now to answer the first question that I asked is, does moving to right field really matter for Mike Trout? Is it going to change his injuries? Is it going to change how often he gets hurt? I think that's the more important question, because you think mentally, if he moves from center to right, he's going to be running less. He's going to do less harm to his body, so he's going to play more, which makes sense in your head. But I wanted to see if the numbers back that up. So what I did is I went and, as a statistician, this is what I do. So I collected data, I asked the question, and I tried to see if there was a difference. So as a statistician, what you do is you assume there's no difference, and you have to be very confident that there is a difference based on where they play, and that isn't just random chance. There's a lot of ways to do this. What I did is I took injuries from a few years ago. I compiled them. I made sure they were outfield related, so I didn't count anything that was, getting hit in the pit. Blah, blah, blah. So I didn't count anything that was getting hit on the hand with a pitch. I didn't count anything that was, a weird fluke accident, like a foul ball off your foot, things like that, things that could happen to literally anybody. I went mostly for, injuries where you run into the wall, where you hurt yourself diving, where you pull a hamstring, things like that could result from normal wear and tear of a high demanding position like center and just outfield in general, because it's a lot of running. So when we look into the data and we run the numbers, we can see that there's really not a lot of difference in injuries between center fielders and right fielders, at least not one that we can attribute to the fact they play different positions as opposed to just random chance, right? There's a lot of things that happen to every baseball player, a lot of injuries that could happen if you're DHing if you're playing shortstop, if you're playing center, that really don't matter. And so what the data tells us that I've collected is that there's really no difference, and that moving to right field as opposed to center field may not really offer the benefit that you think it is. The best idea for Mike Trout to avoid injury, in my opinion, after running these numbers, is DHing him. The only way to avoid injury is to give yourself less opportunities to be injured, right? And every time you step on that field, every time a ball is hit, that's an opportunity to hurt yourself. You know, you never know if one pitch you're going to hit up against the wall, it's going to be on the warning track, you're going to be flagging it down, you're going to catch it, and you're going to slam into that wall, and you're going to, break your toe. You don't know what's going to happen. It could happen on literally any pitch. And the only way to avoid this is to not be on the field. I don't think it's going to really matter for Mike Trout whether or not he's playing right or playing center. I think if you're injury prone, you're injury prone, right? And so I looked more into also if the injury severity was any worse or if you could get hurt multiple times. And across the board, it was a no. Right fielders and center fielders don't get hurt, multiple times. At different rates, they don't get any more serious injuries. In fact, the injury one is the least correlated one. If you're in the outfield and you get hurt, it doesn't matter where you play. It's probably going to be about the same, right? Being exposed is being exposed. And I think if we look at Mike Trout historically in all of his injuries, and we kind of break them down, or not all of them, but a few of them, a lot of Mike Trout's injuries aren't even fielding related, like when he tore his thumb ligament sliding into the bag, or he, got hit in the hand and broke his hamate bone, and what was it, just swinging a bat. So it's like, if he's swinging a bat, he could get injured. So what is taking him out of the outfield going to do? Now, there are some injuries that could be exacerbated. He had a foot surgery a few years ago. That's just from being on your feet all the time. And that probably has something to do with playing in the outfield. Don't get me wrong. Some of his injuries are or could be attributed to playing in the outfield a lot. So I think the only way to keep him safe, or at least safer, is to DH him. So if I'm the Angels, I don't know if I'd be comfortable playing Soler in a corner outfield spot ever. But if he's playable there, you just want Mike Trout on the bench when the other team is hitting, because you need him on the field at the plate more than you need him in the outfield. So I think moving from center field to right field is kind of historically a misconception, and it's really not going to do a lot for you. Baseball just carries the inherent risk, and the only way to protect Trout is to keep him in the lineup, but not on the field. That's the only way the Angels are going to do anything significant, at least from what I see, to keep him healthy. And I think just in terms of baseball as a whole, that can probably be attributed to a lot of things. If you're an athlete, if you're good at what you do and you avoid injury, you should just play your position and the one you're best at. I don't think you should tailor your outfield to avoid injuries. I think you should just tailor it to defense. If you have the best defenders and the best positions, that will give you the best chance to win. If you're afraid someone's going to get hurt, DH them. Make them the designated hitter. Take them off the field. It's the only way to significantly reduce their opportunities to be hurt. And I think that's really the best way to help it all, right? But I am grateful for the Angels for making this move to kind of trigger my brain and be like, does this really matter? And I don't think it does. But, maybe it's a placebo thing for Mike Trout. Maybe it'll make him feel better. I don't really know. Maybe they've talked about it and they have identified a specific issue in the clubhouse with playing center. I'm not there, so I can't really tell you. All I can tell you is that it probably doesn't mean much, and they should just DH him if they want him to be healthy. But I am glad they did this because I think it's fun. And if there's anything else that y'all want me to talk about or look into or research, like if, starters that move into the bullpen are better, things like that you can quantify and research, I would love to. Just let me know your ideas, comment, shoot me find me on Twitter and send me a DM there. It doesn't really matter. I don't mind. And just let me know the things that you'd like to know. Let me know if you found this interesting. Be sure to like and follow. And I'm just excited to go watch baseball after this. Go Mariners, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.